Hello, travelers. Professor GreyTail here. I know that you have already learned much about our magical world, where good and evil intertwine their wands in an eternal dance. But I am certain I can still surprise you. Night settles upon Hogwarts like a velvet curtain, soft and deep, and the castle's ancient stones drink in every whisper of wind. Long after curfew, while lantern light fades from the corridors, a lone boy slips through the shadows with the poise of someone born to them. Tom Riddle moves as though the darkness itself has parted to let him pass. He is only 15, yet already feared in quiet ways. A prefect who smiles rarely, a student whose gaze lingers too long on secrets better left untouched. Tonight, however, he seeks something far older than rule-breaking. For a week now, strange murmurs have drifted to Tom through cracked doorways and echoing staircases, rumors of a relic slumbering in the forgotten depths beneath the castle. A relic said to reveal one's truest nature. Tom's curiosity did not simply awaken, it flared, fierce and cold. He descends a staircase that most students believe leads nowhere. The torches here are long dead, but Tom's wand burns with a faint silver glow, enough to chase back the blackness without betraying his position. Dust lies thick on the steps, undisturbed for decades. Yet halfway down, he notices something curious. Faint scuff marks in the grime, as though someone else has passed here not long ago. Someone determined, someone desperate. He files the thought away and continues. The staircase ends in a vaulted corridor of stone, its walls cracked and bowed as though the weight of centuries presses upon them. Here, the castle feels older than the founders, older than memory. Tom senses the lingering hum of magic, subtle yet potent, and it quickens his pulse. He reaches a rusted iron door half swallowed by cobwebs. On its surface, beneath the corrosion, runes twist in shapes he does not immediately recognize. They pulse faintly when his wand nears, almost as if they breathe. Tom smiles, a thin, satisfied curve of the lips. At last. But before he can attempt to force the door, a soft shuffle echoes from behind him. He whirls, wand raised. An elderly man stands at the base of the staircase, a wiry figure with hunched shoulders, wrapped in a caretaker's coat that has seen better years. His lantern rattles softly in his shaking hand. His face is narrow and lined, his eyes pale with worry rather than malice, yet there is unmistakable determination in the way he sets his jaw. Tom recognizes him at once. Bramwell Gryce, the former caretaker relegated to groundskeeping after some unspecified disgrace. He is a man the students ignore, a ghost among the living. But what is he doing here? "You shouldn't be down here, boy," Gryce rasps. "This place was sealed for a reason." Tom lowers his wand only slightly. "And yet, you are here." Gryce's gaze flickers to the iron door. "I've searched for that relic longer than you've been alive. Don't pretend you understand what lies behind it." Tom steps closer, the air sharpening with tension. "If you know what it is, then tell me." "No." The old man's voice cracks but does not waver. "Because you seek it for the wrong reasons. Anyone with eyes can see the hunger in you." Tom's expression turns colder than the stones around them. "I intend to claim what is mine." Gryce's lantern flickers. "You think darkness will obey you, but it names its master, lad, names him and binds him. You take one step through that door, and it will show you who you truly are." Tom's heart thunders, not with fear, but with fierce electric anticipation. Then perhaps it is time the world learned my name. Gryce stiffens. His mouth opens as if to argue further, but he sees something in Tom, a certainty beyond reason, a promise of what he will one day become, and the caretaker pales. "You don't know what waits for you in there," he whispers. "But I do." Tom turns back to the door, raising his wand. "Then watch closely." He speaks the unlocking charm. The runes flare with sudden light, and the corridor trembles as ancient mechanisms groan awake. Dust rains from the ceiling. The iron door shudders, then slowly swings inward, exhaling a draft colder than winter's breath. Beyond it lies a stairway, spiraling downward into impenetrable dark. Tom steps forward without hesitation, but Gryce grabs his arm, not roughly, but with surprising strength. "You don't understand. If you take that relic, it will mark you. It will name you as—" Tom snaps his arm free. "As what?" The caretaker hesitates, the single heartbeat of doubt sealing his fate. The boy's eyes harden. Without another word, Tom descends the stairway, vanishing into the depths. Gryce curses under his breath, then follows, lantern swinging wildly, for he knows he cannot allow the boy to face what lies below. Not alone, and certainly not victorious. The darkness closes around them, and far beneath Hogwarts, something ancient stirs, sensing a seeker approaching, one whose name has not yet been spoken, but soon will be. The stairway coils downward like the spine of some vast, slumbering beast. Each step groans beneath Tom Riddle's weight, though the sound is swallowed quickly by the heavy dark. His wand light trembles along the stone walls, revealing ancient carvings that twist and fade before he can read them. The air grows colder with every turn, as though the castle itself draws breath from some void far below. Gryce follows at a distance, his lantern casting a warm but fragile glow. He mutters to himself between ragged breaths, warnings, pleas, perhaps prayers. Tom pays him no mind. The caretaker is an inconvenience, nothing more, and Tom has long since learned to ignore the chatter of lesser men who fear what he seeks. At last, the stairway empties into a low, domed chamber. Tom steps into it, raising his wand until its pale light reaches the far wall. The chamber is perfectly round, its stones smoother than those above, as though shaped by careful hands long before Hogwarts existed. In its center lies a pool of black water, still as glass, encircled by faintly glowing symbols. Tom approaches, feeling the hum of concealed power, a strange pulsing rhythm, neither warm nor cold, neither welcoming nor hostile, simply waiting. He kneels at the edge. The water's surface shifts. Slowly, a reflection forms. His own face, pale and sharp, but the eyes seem deeper, darker, filled with shadows that pulse like living things. Gryce stumbles in behind him. "Don't touch it, lad. Stand away." Tom does not turn. "You said the relic reveals one's truest nature. It does more than reveal." The caretaker's lantern clatters to the floor, its dim light flickering across the walls. It judges, it names, and once named, a man cannot escape that truth. Tom's voice is a whisper of cold steel. "I do not fear what I am. That is because you do not yet know it." Tom finally rises, turning his gaze upon the trembling old man. "If this relic is as powerful as you claim, why seek it yourself?" A flicker of shame crosses Gryce's face. "To prove I was not what I once feared. To free myself from a past I could not bear." Tom's eyes narrow. "And what name did you fear it would give you?" Gryce shakes his head, refusing to answer. "Listen to me, boy. This relic binds to the first who completes its rite. A whisper, a single word, spoken into its depths, your destiny etched forever. You must not attempt it. Tom steps back to the water's edge, his decision already carved into every line of his face. I intend to claim the truth of who I am. If the relic believes it can name me, then let it try. He lifts his wand. The symbols around the pool flare to life, flooding the chamber with silver light. The water shifts, rising into a spiraling column that reaches toward the ceiling like a serpent of shadow and moonlight. A low hum grows into a deep, thrumming chant. No language Tom knows, yet he understands it all the same. Gryce gasps, stumbling backward. Stop! The ritual has begun. You fool, you've awakened it. Tom stands unmoving, eyes fixed on the twisting column. Within its depths, he sees fleeting shapes, a serpent's coil, a crown shattered and remade, flames swallowing a name until nothing remains but ash. His heartbeat drums louder, faster, pulling at the edges of the magic as though urging it onward. The relic speaks, or perhaps it breathes, and the column lowers until it hovers before Tom's face. A whisper curls from its depths, soft but inhuman. Speak, it murmurs. Tell the darkness what you are. Tom opens his mouth, but Gryce lunges. The old man grabs Tom's arm, wrenching it downward. The wand light falters. The column surges wildly, spilling shadow across the chamber. Runes crackle, the floor trembles, and the relic's whisper grows sharp, almost angry. Gryce shouts over the rising hum. You don't know what you're doing. This magic, this right, it cannot be stolen. It must be earned. If you force it, the darkness will turn on you both. Tom twists free, fury igniting within him. You dare interfere? I dare to keep you from a fate worse than mine. For a heartbeat, the two stand locked in struggle. Tom's cold determination against Gryce's desperate resolve. The shadows writhe, reacting to their conflict, feeding on it. The relic's voice deepens, echoing through the chamber like a tolling bell. Two seek the truth. Only one shall be named. The column splits, forming two serpentine streams, one reaching for Tom, the other for the trembling caretaker. Gryce cries out, shielding his face, but the magic coils around him, pinning him where he stands. Tom steps forward, forcing his voice steady. The relic chooses the stronger. And strength, Gryce gasps, is not the same as worth. The relic tightens its grip on both seekers. The chamber darkens until only the spiraling magic remains, casting silver glints across Tom's determined face and Gryce's fearful one. The power builds, pressing on the air like an oncoming storm. A final whisper emerges, not from Tom, not from Gryce, but from the relic itself. Speak your name. Tom inhales. The moment is his destiny, his triumph. But before he can utter a word, the relic shudders. A crack resounds through the chamber. The shadows recoil violently. Something has gone terribly, impossibly wrong. And in that fractured instant, Tom realizes the relic has sensed more than strength. It has sensed a rival. The true conflict has begun. The chamber quakes as if some buried giant has stirred from centuries of sleep. Dust storms from the ceiling. The runes flicker like dying stars, and the spiraling streams of shadow recoil, thrashing wildly through the air. Tom staggers but does not fall. He braces himself with one hand against the trembling stone and lifts his wand, eyes narrowed in fierce calculation. Gryce is less fortunate. The caretaker is thrown to his knees, his lantern smashing against the floor. Darkness devours the chamber as its flame dies, leaving only the relic's frenzied glow to paint the two figures in silver and black. The pool, once calm, then rising, now churns like a living vortex. A crack fractures the stone at its center, splitting outward in jagged lines that pulse with raw magic. The relic is unraveling, not fully awakened yet no longer dormant. Tom recognizes the danger, but he also sees opportunity flickering within the chaos. The relic's voice returns, warped now, split into many tones at once. Some deep as the depths beneath the lake, others sharp as broken bone. Two seekers, one truth, one name. The right must bind. Gryce clutches his chest, gasping. It's failing. Boy, we must flee before it takes us both. Tom's reply is calm, cold, and unyielding. No, a power like this does not come twice in a lifetime. He strides toward the vortex. The shadows surge toward him as if drawn by his will, though he knows it is the relic's instinct, a dark, ancient hunger recognizing something in him. Gryce reaches out weakly, trying to catch his sleeve, but Tom slips from his grasp like a wraith. The relic speaks again, trembling through the stone. Name yourself, seeker, and be bound. Tom lifts his chin. His eyes gleam, not with fear, but with triumph. Then let the darkness learn who stands before. The chamber screams. Magic lashes outward, a burst of blackened light that cuts Tom short and hurls him back. His wand flies from his grip, clattering across the floor. He slams against the wall, the impact jolting breath from his lungs. For a heartbeat, the world blurs. Through the ringing in his ears, he hears Gryce shouting, not in fear, but in horror. It's chosen! Merlin, help us! It's chosen me! Tom forces his vision to steady. The shadows, once coiled toward him, now writhe around the old caretaker. They curl like serpents about his arms, his throat, his shaking form, as though deciding where to sink their fangs. Gryce tries to stand, but the shadows drag him to his knees. His eyes glow with a silver light, as if the relic peers through them. Tom's fury rises, sharp and venomous. This power is mine, not his. He lunges for his wand, snatching it from the floor. The relic senses his intention and lashes out, whipping a tendril of darkness toward him. Tom dives aside. The strike hits the stone where he stood, carving a smoking scar across the floor. The relic groans. Two seekers cannot stand. One must yield. One must break. Gryce's voice trembles as he shouts, "Riddle, help me stop it! It cannot claim a heart, so—" But he never finishes the plea. The shadows clamp over his mouth, choking the words. Tom steps closer despite the danger, eyes narrowed in cold assessment. The relic has made a choice, but not a final one. Gryce is being tested, not yet named, and Tom feels the opportunity in this moment, thin as a blade's edge. If Gryce fails the test, the relic will seek another. Tom lifts his wand. "If you cannot withstand it, old man, then step aside." Gryce struggles, reaching one shaking hand toward Tom, pleading silently. But Tom's face is unreadable, carved in hard resolve. The chamber's light swells to blinding brightness. Within it, Tom sees visions spinning in the air, shadows shaped like memories. A boy crying in an orphanage corridor, a snake slithering at a whispered command, a diary page written in elegant, merciless script, dreams of power, of greatness, of a name the world would learn to fear. But these visions surround Gryce, not him. Tom understands. The relic is offering the caretaker the full weight of truth. His truth. Whatever shame or misdeed Gryce once feared, whatever guilt gnawed at him, it is being dragged to the surface, merciless and bare. "Yield," whispers the relic. Gryce shakes his head violently, eyes wide, silver tears running down his cheeks. Tom watches, unmoving. Then the relic's tendrils tighten again. Gryce cries out, a thin, broken sound. The shadows coil deeper, binding him to the stone beneath him. The pool's water rises once more, twisting around him like a noose of night. Tom steps closer. He is near enough now to feel the relic's breath, cold as a tomb's air. He speaks softly, almost gently. "Give in, Grice. It is not your destiny." Grice looks up at him, horror mingled with understanding. "You wanted to take me." Tom does not deny it. Another tremor splits the chamber. The water surges upward, swallowing Grice's lower half. He gasps as the dark liquid creeps over his chest. Tom sees no salvation in the old man's eyes, only despair and inevitable defeat. "Yield," the relic demands again. Grice's final resistance breaks. His head falls forward. The shadows seal around him like a closing fist. A whisper echoes through the trembling chamber. "Named." The relic withdraws, and the water collapses violently back into the pool. The runes dim. The tremors weaken. The test is over. Tom steps toward the fallen caretaker, whose body lies motionless at the pool's edge. Shadows cling to him like soot, fading slowly. Tom crouches beside him, studying his pale, slack face. "Unworthy," he murmurs. But the relic is not finished. The pool stirs once more. A thin thread of darkness rises, small, fragile, but deliberate, and coils through the air toward Tom. He does not retreat. The whisper returns, soft as breath against his ear. The first seeker stands still unbound. "Speak and be named." Tom's pulse quickens. The relic, emptied of its failed candidate, now turns its full attention to him. Stillness holds the chamber. Tom Riddle gazes into the swirling dark and understands. This moment will carve his path. This moment will set his destiny. He inhales, and as the relic leans close, awaiting his answer, Tom prepares to speak the truth he has guarded all his life. A truth shaped like ambition. A truth shaped like power. A truth shaped like a name, yet unborn. Silence folds over the chamber, deep and resonant, as though the castle itself holds its breath. Only the thin strand of shadow rising from the relic's pool moves, swaying gently in the air like a serpent tasting its prey. Tom Riddle stands unmoving, his wand lowered at his side, his posture calm, yet sharpened with purpose. The darkness hovers close enough to graze his cheek, expectant and hungry. "Speak," the relic murmurs, its voice now softer, steadier than before. "Tell the darkness what you are." Tom lets the words settle in the hollow air. He feels no fear, only the cold thrill of destiny tightening around him. The relic has shed its first choice, discarding Grice as one might cast aside a broken tool. Now, with the old caretaker lying senseless at his feet, Tom stands alone in the relic's gaze. He lifts his head and meets the swirling shadows. "I am the master of my fate," Tom whispers, "not the servant of yours." The relic pulses, an echo of surprise rippling through the air. "You defy the right?" "I shape it," Tom replies. His voice grows stronger, steadier. "I will not allow a relic to define me. I will claim my own name." The shadows shudder, folding back like waves recoiling from stone. The runes around the pool tremble with faint, flickering light. Something ancient stirs within the chamber, a long-buried intelligence awakening to see the boy who dares to challenge it. "Few resist the naming," the relic hums. "Most fall, most beg, most break." "I am not most." The relic's thread coils more tightly, winding around Tom like a whispering storm. Images spark before his eyes, not visions this time, but echoes of thought, impressions wrapped in shadow. He sees a boy staring through rain-streaked glass at an orphanage garden, longing for a world he cannot yet reach. He sees a serpent coiled beneath his bed, blinking intelligent eyes in the dark. He sees Hogwarts' great halls stretching before him like a kingdom waiting for its king. He sees a future carved in fire, fear and awe drawn upon every face, power, influence, dominion. The relic hovers inches from his lips, its voice carrying a deeper tone. Name yourself Tom Riddle. Speak, and the darkness shall bind to your truth. Tom breathes slowly. I have no wish to be bound. You cannot seek truth and remain untouched by it. Then I shall not seek truth, Tom murmurs. I shall create it. A low hum builds in the chamber. The relic is unsettled, perhaps even challenged, by this boy who refuses to kneel, refuses to surrender. You stand at the threshold of fate, it whispers. A single word will shape the path before you. Speak, and let that word be carved into the world. Tom's eyes narrow. A name rises within him, not spoken, not yet fully formed, but alive like a spark waiting to ignite. A name free of his past, free of the orphanage, free of every chain that ever held him. A name meant to be feared. But he does not say it aloud. Instead, he steps forward. The relic recoils, startled. Tom's presence presses upon the air, cold, deliberate, commanding. His wand light flickers, bending toward him as though pulled by unseen gravity. You mistake me for a seeker of truth, Tom says. I seek something far greater. And what is that? The relic breathes. Power. The chamber shakes as though struck by his words. The shadows hiss, serpentine and sharp. The relic swells with magic, struggling between acceptance and defiance. You would defy the right? It asks again. I would master it, Tom declares. The relic lunges. Darkness wraps around him in a sudden, violent strike, coiling around his arms and throat. Tom gasps as the shadows constrict, probing his mind, scraping at his thoughts. The air grows heavy, thick, pulsing with raw energy. The runes flare blinding white, and the water rises in jagged shards of black. The relic's voice booms through the chamber. Name yourself! Tom staggers but does not fall. He grits his teeth, forcing each breath through narrowed lungs. The shadows press harder, flooding him with visions meant to crush him. Visions of failure, weakness, obscurity. He sees himself overlooked, unremembered, forgotten in time like a candle snuffed out. He rejects it. I am more, he growls. The relic tightens its embrace, pushing deeper, forcing its will against his. Tom's knees threaten to buckle, but he plants his feet, muscles trembling, wand clenched in white-knuckled defiance. Images flash, students whispering behind his back, professors dismissing him, a world that refuses to bow. He rejects it all. I am greater, he snarls. The relic's assault intensifies. The chamber darkens until Tom sees nothing but swirling black and streaks of silver. Every shadow, every whisper, every ancient force pushes him toward surrender. But he clings to the spark inside him, the spark of a name unspoken, a name he will forge with his own hands. He forces himself upright and roars into the swirling void. I will not be named by you. A blast of power erupts from the center of the pool. The shadows explode outward, releasing Tom with enough force to send him skidding across the stone floor. The relic shrieks, not in rage, but in shock. The water collapses, the runes dim, and a fissure cracks down the heart of the pool, splitting its surface. Tom coughs, dragging in a shuddering breath. His limbs tremble, but his eyes blaze with fierce triumph. The relic settles, its magic weakened, but not extinguished. It speaks one final time, its voice quiet, reverent, almost fearful. You choose your own name, Tom Riddle, but know this, your name shall not be light. Tom rises slowly, wiping blood from the corner of his mouth. He lifts his wand, letting its glow illuminate the fractured chamber. I know, he whispers. He steps toward the cracked pool, and I welcome it. Behind him, Gryce stirs faintly, but Tom does not look back. The relic has spoken its warning, but he has carved his own path. A path the world will one day tremble to witness. The fractured chamber still trembled with the relic's fading power, its runes dimmed to faint embers along the walls. The air was thick with the scent of ancient magic, sharp as cold iron, lingering like the ghost of a storm. Tom stood at the pool's broken edge, wand light flickering upon his pale features, the shadows deepening the sharpness of his gaze. His breath came steady now, though his limbs still remembered the force of the relic's assault. Behind him, Gryce stirred again. A ragged cough echoed off the stone, weak yet persistent. Tom turned with a slow, deliberate motion, regarding the old caretaker sprawled across the floor like a discarded cloak. Shadows still clung to him, fading in thin wisps that curled away from his skin. His eyes fluttered open, leaking fear in every flicker. "You lived," Gryce rasped. "How?" Tom stepped toward him, boots whispering across the cold floor. "Because I refused to break." Gryce attempted to push himself upright but failed, collapsing with a tremor of pain. "No one defies a relic of the Founders. No one. It should have consumed you. Many things have tried." Tom knelt beside the old man, but not with compassion. His gaze was calculating, weighing what use remained in this trembling figure. Gryce swallowed, sensing the danger, yet unable to flee. "The relic told you," Gryce whispered, breath hitching, "that your name shall not be light." Tom's expression did not shift. It was not the first to know that truth. Gryce's voice lowered to a frightened whisper. "You are walking a path from which no man returns." "Then I shall walk forward," Tom replied, "until the world must follow." The chamber's walls groaned softly, a low vibration passing through the stones. Cracks widened along the ceiling, dust raining down like pale ash. The relic's violent upheaval had weakened the ancient structure, and now the chamber threatened to collapse. Gryce's head jerked upward. "We must go. This place will bury us." Tom rose, glancing once more at the cracked pool. Lines of shimmering darkness pulsed through its fractures, threads of power still alive beneath the stone. He could feel that faint magic calling to him, unfinished, resisting him even now, as though daring him to return. He reached a hand toward it. The pool responded, shuddering with a faint surge. A hairline fissure shot across the chamber floor. Gryce screamed, "Leave it, boy! Do you seek death?" Tom's fingers curled slowly into a fist. He withdrew his hand. "Not death," he murmured. "Dominion." A thunderous crack tore through the chamber. A slab of stone dropped from the ceiling, smashing against the floor where Tom had stood only moments before. The impact shook the entire chamber. Water splashed from the fractured pool in dark arcs. Tom moved toward the stairway without haste, but with unerring certainty. Gryce struggled after him, dragging one leg behind the other, as though every step cost him what little strength remained. They reached the base of the stairway just as another section of the ceiling collapsed, sending a gust of dust-laden air rushing past them. Tom cast a glance upward. The darkness above seemed endless, the stair spiraling toward whatever fate awaited them. Gryce clung to the stair's first step, gasping, "Help me, please. I cannot climb alone." Tom looked down at him. There was no hatred in his eyes, no delight in cruelty, only judgment, cold and absolute. "You sought the relic," Tom said quietly. "You awakened it before I arrived. You interfered, knowing your weakness would doom you." Gryce's trembling hand reached toward him. "I only wished to keep you from a darkness too great for any boy to bear." Tom's expression hardened. "You failed." Another tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. Dust exploded from the stone walls. Gryce cried out as the staircase quaked beneath them. Tom turned away. He climbed. Gryce's voice rose behind him, cracking with despair. "Tom, Riddle, don't leave me here." Tom did not look back. Each step carried him farther from the crumbling relic chamber, the echoes of the caretaker's pleas fading beneath the roar of a collapsing world. The staircase writhed with dust and falling debris, yet Tom ascended with the surety of one whose path had already been chosen. Halfway up, the tremors ceased abruptly. Silence followed. Tom paused, glancing down the darkened spiral. The chamber below was veiled in smoke and shadow, no movement visible within. Whether Gryce still lived, Tom neither knew nor greatly cared. Some truths did not require witnessing. He resumed climbing, emerging into the upper corridor with a final weary step. The iron door groaned shut behind him of its own accord, the runes flickering once before fading completely. The relic was sealed once more, broken, perhaps, but not harmless. Tom brushed dust from his robes and lifted his wand, its pale glow softening the corridor's gloom. The castle's air felt different now. Thicker, more aware, as though Hogwarts itself sensed the shift within the boy who stood in its depths. Tom walked forward. He made no haste, yet every step carried a quiet finality. The encounter with the relic had not granted him a name, yet it had forged something far more valuable. A certainty, sharp and cold as a new blade. He would not be shaped by ancient power. He would shape power itself. At the corridor's end, a faint lantern glow flickered, the distant patrol of a teacher or prefect. Tom extinguished his wand light and slipped into the shadows, moving with a snake's grace. Behind him, deep in the buried chambers, the relic's last echo stirred faintly. Not light, not light. Tom allowed a thin smile to touch his lips. No, not light, but greatness seldom is. When he finally emerged into Hogwarts' moonlit halls, the night felt quieter, the world steadying around the weight of what had transpired below. His path lay before him now, dark, unbroken, ascending toward a destiny he alone would craft. And before long, the world would learn the name he had chosen for himself, a name forged not by relics or prophecies, but by his own indomitable will. Dawn crept across the sky in pale strokes, yet the castle remained hushed beneath its waking glow. Hogwarts often felt alive at sunrise, as though the stones themselves stretched after a long slumber, but this morning a strange stillness lingered, as though something newly birthed in its depths had unsettled even the ancient walls. Tom Riddle walked through the quiet corridors with measured steps, each footfall soft and deliberate, his mind sharpened by the night's ordeal. He reached the abandoned classroom where he sometimes retreated to think, a forgotten chamber hidden behind a tapestry of faded lions. Dust lay undisturbed upon the windowsill, moonlight pooling in pale ribbons across the floor, despite the rising sun outside. Tom stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and let silence fold around him like a cloak. His robes still bore faint traces of the dust from the collapsing chamber below the castle. He brushed his sleeve, though the remnants of the relic's magic clung deeper, not to fabric, but to thought. That whispering darkness had not named him, but it had tested him, measured him, and found no weakness large enough to consume. The failure of the relic did not trouble him, it strengthened him. For a moment, he savored that truth. Yet something else gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. Gryce. Whether the old caretaker had survived the collapse was uncertain. Tom doubted it. But the relic's tremors had been strong, and the castle's stones were resilient. It was not impossible the man had been spared by some mercy of fate. If he lived, he knew too much. He had witnessed Tom's defiance, his ambition, his hunger for power, and Tom trusted no one with such knowledge, least of all, a trembling, guilt-ridden old man whose conscience swayed with every sigh. But there was more. Gryce had known of the relic long before Tom discovered it, which meant others might too. Tom paced the room, fingers interlaced behind his back. If legends of this relic had survived in rumor or record, they might be tied to the earliest days of Hogwarts, perhaps even to the founders themselves. To understand the relic fully, he would need to know who crafted it and for what purpose. Knowledge was power, and power was the path he walked. A soft whisper drifted through the room as the enchanted candles along the walls flickered awake. Their flames cast long shadows that trembled across Tom's face. He stopped. There it was again. A whisper, faint, almost imperceptible, sliding along the edges of hearing like a breath drawn through stone. Tom moved to the center of the room, wand in hand, though he sensed no threat. The whisper grew clearer, not loud enough to form words, but persistent enough to suggest intention. It felt familiar, like the echo of something he had touched only hours before. The relic. Had its voice truly reached him here? Had he carried some part of its magic with him when he left the chamber? Or had he awakened something older still by refusing to be bound? The whisper deepened, swirling like wind through dead leaves. Tom closed his eyes, steadying his breath. He let the whisper draw nearer, not as a plea for understanding, but as a test. If the relic sought to speak to him beyond its chamber, then its power remained alive, fractured yet reaching. But instead of clarity, the whisper broke suddenly, shattered by a sharp knock upon the classroom door. Tom's eyes snapped open. The whisper vanished like smoke chased by wind. He composed himself in an instant, smoothing his expression into calm neutrality. With a flick of his wand, he dismissed the lingering shadows. The knock came again, firmer this time. Tom opened the door. A prefect, Caro, pale-haired and nervous, stood in the doorway. Behind him, sunlight filtered into the hall, casting long golden bars across the floor. "There you are," Caro said, attempting a smile that faltered beneath Tom's cool gaze. "Professor Slughorn is looking for you. Something urgent. He sent me to fetch you at once." "Urgent?" Tom echoed softly. "At this hour?" Caro swallowed. "Yes." He seemed quite agitated. I think it concerns the caretaker." Tom felt his pulse steady, not quicken. "Is that so?" Caro nodded. They found him in the lower corridors at dawn, unconscious, barely breathing. He keeps muttering nonsense, shadows, voices, things that make no sense at all. Tom stepped into the hall, pulling the door shut behind him. "Where is he now?" "In the hospital wing," Caro replied. "The professors are questioning him, but he's not coherent. They thought perhaps you might know something." Tom allowed a thin, unreadable expression to cross his face. "Very well. Take me to Slughorn." They walked together through the quiet hallways, Caro keeping half a step behind as though uncertain whether to treat Tom as peer or superior. Tom did not look back at him. His thoughts sharpened, each piece sliding into place with cold precision. Gryce lived. Far from being an inconvenience, this might serve Tom's interests. If the caretaker raved of shadows and relics, the professors would dismiss his words as delirium. And if Tom played his part well, he could steer suspicion far from himself, perhaps even gather more information about what the old man knew. Yet Tom felt something else beneath these calculations, the faint echo of the whisper that had stirred in the abandoned classroom. It had sought him, called to him, though whether as warning or invitation, he could not yet discern. They turned a corner, and the sound of hurried footsteps drifted from deeper within the castle. A group of younger students whispered anxiously near the stairwell, falling silent as Tom passed. He ignored them. He had no time for rumors born of fear. When they reached the hospital wing, Caro pushed open the door and Tom stepped inside. The air smelled of potion fumes and clean linen. At the far end of the room, professors gathered around a bed where a frail figure trembled beneath the sheets. Gryce. His skin was ashen, his eyes half open yet unfocused, lips twitching as fragmented words spilled out. Darkness, naming, shadows, the boy. Tom approached slowly. Slughorn spotted him and hurried over, relief etching deep into his features. Tom, thank goodness. Perhaps you can make sense of this. Poor Gryce was discovered near the old service tunnels. Quite a dreadful state. Keeps muttering about shadows that tried to swallow him. Tom tilted his head, gaze steady. Has he said anything coherent, Professor? Only fragments, Slughorn replied. But he mentioned you by name. Tom let a flicker of concern cross his face, perfectly measured. Me? Why? That, Slughorn sighed, is what we hope you can help us understand. Tom stepped to Gryce's bedside. The old man's eyes flickered open, and for a moment, just a moment, they locked onto Tom's. A tremor passed through him, as though a memory surfaced from some shadowed corner of his mind. He whispered, voice hoarse and breaking, "Your name. Darkness." Tom leaned in, expression shaped with quiet confusion. "Mr. Gryce," he murmured, "what happened to you?" Gryce's breath hitched. His eyes widened. He struggled to speak, but the words were lost in a raw exhale. His hand twitched, reaching toward Tom as if seeking salvation or warning him. But no further words came. A healer stepped forward. He drifts again. His mind is unstable. Tom straightened. He masked his satisfaction behind a veil of concern. No clarity, no accusations, only delirium. Slughorn rested a heavy hand on Tom's shoulder. "If you know anything at all, now is the time to tell us." Tom met his gaze with quiet earnestness. "I know nothing, Professor," he said softly, "but I will help however I can." And though Slughorn nodded, comforted, Tom Riddle knew the truth. He would help, but not them, only himself. Night returned to Hogwarts, draped in muted silver. Its quiet halls steeped in secrets the castle itself seemed unwilling to speak aloud. Yet Tom Riddle walked them with calm certainty, his steps soft and deliberate, as though each footfall marked a claim upon the ancient stones. He had left the hospital wing hours earlier, offering hollow assurances to Slughorn and the healers, but his mind had already turned toward deeper questions far more significant than the state of a broken caretaker. Gryce's delirious whisper still echoed faintly in Tom's thoughts. Your name. Darkness. A warning to most. To Tom, an affirmation. Now, with the castle asleep around him, he followed the whisper that had lingered since dawn, subtle but persistent, brushing against the edges of his awareness like a thread tugged by unseen fingers. It called him not with desperation, but with invitation. He traced the path through narrow staircases and unused corridors, traveling instinctively, led not by memory, but by sensation. The castle had countless forgotten places, niches and corners abandoned since the founder's time. Tonight, Tom sought one such place. He stopped before a stretch of wall beneath a spiral stair, its stones uneven, older than those around it. A faint vibration pulsed from behind the wall. Not sound, not magic exactly, but the echo of something watching. Tom pressed his fingers to the stones. They shifted beneath his touch. A seam appeared, then widened, the stones peeling away like a curtain of solid night. A narrow passage was revealed, steep steps descending into unknown depth. Cold air breathed from the darkness, carrying the scent of damp earth and something older still. Tom did not hesitate. He entered. The passage sealed behind him. Only the soft glow of his wand illuminated the descent as he followed the spiral into the bowels of the castle once more. Yet this path felt different from the one leading to the relic's chamber. Less structured, more primal, like roots growing where no gardener had dared shape them. When the stair ended, Tom stepped into a vast underground hall. The ceiling arched high above, lost in darkness, though faint motes of luminescent dust drifted through the air like suspended stars. Columns carved with serpentine patterns lined the edges of the hall, their scales etched with runes faded beyond recognition. At the far end stood a stone dais, circular and unadorned save for a single symbol carved into its center, a serpent coiled upon itself. Tom's pulse quickened, not from fear, but anticipation. He approached the dais. As he did, the whisper returned, clear now, gathering strength like water finding its course. It slithered around his thoughts, gentle yet commanding. You refuse the naming. Tom's grip on his wand tightened. I refused submission. The whisper paused, as though appraising him. Yet you seek understanding. Tom inclined his head slightly. Knowledge is power. Power, the whisper echoed. Yes, you hunger for it as the founders did, but few have walked this place since their time. The motes of dust brightened, forming thin strands of pale light drifting toward the dais. Tom sensed them gathering purpose, knitting into a shape he strained to discern. What is this hall? He asked softly. The one before you called it the Hall of Echoes. The whisper slid through his mind like a chill. Here, the castle remembers. Here lie fragments of magic untouched by years of neglect. Tom stepped onto the dais. A tremor ran through the stone, awakening old enchantments. The carved serpent glowed faintly, casting long shadows across the hall. Tom stood still, poised, waiting. The whisper swelled around him, shaping itself into a presence. No face, no form, but an intelligence woven from centuries of silent watching. The relic below sought to name you, it murmured. A name shaped by truth, but you would shape your own. Yes, Tom replied, voice steady. But do you know the cost? Tom did not answer immediately. He sensed the hall listening, waiting to see whether he faltered. He did not. Power always demands a price, he said at last. That does not change my path. A faint vibration passed through the dais, as if the stone itself approved. And what path do you claim, child of shadows? Tom lifted his chin. A path no relic will define, no prophecy will bind, a destiny forged by will alone. The whisper's tone darkened with something like amusement. Ambition burns brightly in you, brighter than most, brighter perhaps than those who once walked these halls. It paused. But the shadows remember, and they do not forget the shape of those who sought too much. Tom felt a flicker of irritation, quiet but real. If you mean to frighten me, you will fail. I do not seek to frighten, the whisper breathed, only to reveal. The air shifted. Suddenly, the hall darkened, the drifting lights extinguished one by one. Tom remained still as the shadows gathered, not violently, but purposefully, swirling around the dais like a cloak settling upon a throne. Shapes formed within the darkness, faint silhouettes, fleeting impressions of figures long past, a founder's memory, a remnant of ancient magic, or merely the hall's own imagination. Tom could not tell. The whisper deepened. Many sought to shape their names. Few succeeded, but one came close, too close, and the darkness marked him. Tom's pulse steadied. Who? A shape emerged, clearer than the rest. A young wizard, eyes burning with fierce resolve, a shadow clinging to his shoulders like a mantle. His expression was hard, unyielding, an echo of Tom himself. He walked a path of power, the whisper said, but he allowed the darkness to choose for him, and so the hall remembers him only by what he became, not what he wished to be. The figure dissolved. Tom's voice was quiet but sharp. And what became of him? He faded, not from the world, but from himself. Tom felt a flicker of contempt. Weakness. Perhaps, the whisper conceded, but it is not weakness to heed warning. It is wisdom. Tom's eyes narrowed. I am not him. No, the whisper agreed. You are something else. The darkness receded slightly, enough for Tom to sense the hall's full attention upon him. You rejected the relic's naming. You claimed your will above its design. That choice has awakened an old thread of magic, one not bound by the founders, nor by fate. Tom felt it then, subtle, coiled, waiting beneath the dais like a serpent beneath warm stone, a power untethered, a possibility. What must I do to claim it? He asked. The whisper softened. To shape your own name, you must first understand the darkness you command, not as master nor servant, but as extension of your will. And Grice? Tom asked. He mutters still. Will he remain a threat? He saw the relic's truth, the whisper replied, but not yours. His mind fractures around shadows he cannot bear. Let him fade. Tom accepted this with silent consent. The whisper continued. To claim what lies here, you must walk deeper, not beneath the castle, but within yourself. The hall will test you, not as the relic tested with force, but with truth you cannot evade. Tom's voice was steady. I do not fear truth. Then step forward. The dais trembled. The stones split into 3 paths, each descending into darkness shaped differently, one steep, one winding, one straight and narrow. Choose your path, the whisper commanded, and walk toward the name you will forge. Tom stepped forward without hesitation. Toward which path? The hall's light dimmed, and Tom Riddle chose. Tom stepped onto the narrow path, not the winding one, with its quiet promises of discovery, not the jagged descent, carved for those who sought trial through brute force. No, he chose the straight path, the one that stretched like a blade of shadow through the heart of the hall. It did not twist, nor tempt, nor whisper. It simply was, as unyielding as the ambition that drove him. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the hall behind him dissolved into darkness. The dais vanished, the drifting lights winked out, and even the whisper that had spoken to him before fell silent. Only the narrow path remained, suspended in an endless void that offered no sense of distance or time. Tom walked. Each step echoed faintly, as though the stone beneath him was unsure whether to hold his weight or let him fall. Yet he felt no danger, only expectation, like a riddle waiting for his answer. Time stretched. Then the void shifted. A shape emerged ahead, faint at first, then sharpening into the outline of a doorway without walls. Within its frame, something flickered. Memories, half-formed, drawn from places Tom had long buried. He approached. As he stepped through, the world solidified, He stood in the orphanage. Rain lashed the windows. The corridor was dim, lit only by a single flickering bulb that cast sickly yellow light across peeling wallpaper. Childish voices echoed from far away, muffled and distant, as though heard through glass. Tom clenched his jaw. "No," he murmured, but the hall did not release him. A small boy sat alone at the far end of the corridor, knees drawn to his chest, dark hair falling over his eyes. He wore patched clothes and clutched a toy soldier missing an arm. His expression was blank, not sad, not frightened, simply empty. Tom recognized him instantly. The boy lifted his head. "Why did they fear me?" the child asked, voice small yet echoing strangely within the hall. "Why did they whisper when I walked past?" Tom did not answer. The child rose, taking a small step forward. "Why was I alone?" Tom's expression hardened. "Because they were weak." The boy blinked, absorbing the words. But the hall did not allow the moment to pass. The world rippled, melting into another scene. The orphanage garden. Gray skies churned overhead as young Tom stood before a group of children who stared at him with wide, uncertain eyes. A snake coiled at his feet, its tongue flickering as though sensing the fear around it. One boy pointed a trembling finger. "You made it come! You talked to it!" The garden blurred and the children vanished. The younger Tom remained, now staring directly at the present Tom with eyes far too wise for a child. "They were afraid," the child said softly, "and you liked it." Tom met the boy's gaze without flinching. "Fear commands respect." "Is that what you seek?" the child whispered. "No." Tom stepped closer. "I seek command." The hall responded. The garden dissolved, replaced by the stone corridors of Hogwarts. Torches flickered, casting warm light across young faces bustling toward their lessons. Students passed without noticing the two Toms standing alone in the hall, a man and the shadow of the boy he once was. The smaller Tom tilted his head. "They do not see you." Tom's eyes narrowed. "They see what they can comprehend." "And the professors?" the child pressed. "They see only a clever student, a promising boy." Tom allowed a thin smile. "Appearances serve their purpose." A voice echoed behind him. "Truth is harder to hide." Tom turned. A new figure approached from the shadows. Himself, yet older, taller, robed in dark fabric that moved like smoke, eyes colder than winter stone. A version not yet realized, but unmistakably born from his own ambition, the future. Tom faced the figure, his expression unreadable. "So this is your test? Showing me what I will become?" The older version smiled faintly. "No, showing you what you choose to become." The child stood between them, small and silent. The older Tom extended a hand. Power, unchallenged, influence that bends nations, a name the world will not dare speak. The hall trembled with the weight of that promise. But then, the child reached for Tom's hand instead. His voice trembled. "And what becomes of me?" Tom looked down. The boy's eyes shone with something he had forgotten. Loneliness, unshielded and raw. For one breath, one impossible moment, the Hall of Echoes waited. Tom knelt, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement of truth. "You become strong," he said quietly. "You become feared. You become more than anyone believed possible." "But do I remain alone?" the child whispered. The question hung in the air like a blade suspended by a single thread. Tom stood, releasing the child's hand. "Strength," he said, "is not found in company." The child faded. The older self vanished. The hall reshaped itself around him, the void folding, the shadows retreating, until only the path remained, straight and unwavering. In the distance, a faint glimmer flickered like a distant star. The whisper returned, not scornful, not triumphant, but solemn. You have faced what shaped you. Now face what awaits you. Tom walked forward. As he approached the distant light, the void began to resolve into stone once more. A doorway, older than the castle itself, appeared ahead. Upon its arch was carved a single line. Only those who name themselves may enter. Tom reached the threshold. His hand lifted. The door opened at his touch, and the Hall of Echoes welcomed him into its deepest chamber, where destiny waited like a coiled serpent, ready to strike. The doorway yawned open with a whisper like breath drawn through ancient stone. A dim light pulsed within, rhythmic as a heartbeat, casting long shadows across the threshold. Tom stepped inside without hesitation. The hall sealed behind him, shutting out all remnants of the outer world. For a moment, true silence enveloped him, silence so complete it felt alive. The chamber was circular, vast, its walls carved with runes eroded by ages. Pale light seeped from threads of silver veining the stone, like rivers of moonlit water frozen in place. At the center rose an obsidian pedestal, smooth and tall as Tom's chest, its surface polished to a mirror sheen. Upon it lay nothing, yet Tom sensed presence, intention, as though something invisible waited with patient breath. Here, the air carried weight. Here, magic gathered like storm clouds before lightning. Here, the Hall of Echoes revealed its core. Tom approached the pedestal. The whisper returned, not as voice, but as shifting air. A murmur formed from memory and possibility. You walked the path of self. Now you stand at the threshold of will. Tom placed his hand upon the cold obsidian surface. It hummed beneath his palm, responding to him like a living thing. "What is this place?" he asked, though he sensed the answer. "A forge," the whisper breathed, "where names are wrought, where destinies are shaped." Tom's heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but with sharpened anticipation. "Here," the whisper continued, "you may craft the truth the relic failed to bind, a name not given, but claimed." The chamber darkened. Runes awakened one by one along the walls, igniting in soft blue flame. They circled him like watchful eyes, each pulse synchronized to some deep rhythm, the pulse of the hall itself. The pedestal vibrated. A shape rose from its surface, formed from strands of shadow coiling together. Slowly, steadily, they wove into the outline of a serpent, its body long and lithe, its head crowned with delicate horns formed of starlit light. Its eyes glowed pale white, unblinking. It was not a creature. It was a question. The whisper shifted, resonant now. "Speak your name, not as the world calls you, nor as destiny demands, but as you choose to be." Tom stared into the serpent's endless gaze. A stirring rippled through him, not uncertainty, but reflection. The hall watched the shape of his thoughts, the weight of his choices, the arc of his ambition. It demanded nothing less than truth, unforgiving, unguarded. He remained silent. Images formed in the air, memories and fragments of futures he had tasted in dream and desire. The orphanage corridor, the serpent beneath the bed, Hogwarts' ancient halls bending subtly, inevitably, around his will. The relic's rejection, his refusal to bend, his defiance forged into armor. The chamber trembled. The serpent opened its mouth. "You cannot step forward without a name. You cannot claim power without identity. Without a word to anchor your will, your strength will scatter to dust." Tom lifted his chin. My strength does not scatter. Then speak, the whisper urged. What shall the world call you? What shall fear bow to? What name shall echo through the ages? Tom closed his eyes, letting silence fill him. A name formed in the depths of his mind, one he had shaped from letters of his own given name, rearranged until they forged something new, something belonging not to a boy, but to a legacy. A name he had crafted long before entering the Hall of Echoes, yet never spoken aloud. But he did not speak it now. The hall shivered. You refuse naming once more? Tom opened his eyes. No, he said. I refuse to speak a name before it is ready to be born. The serpent recoiled slightly as though taken aback. My name is not yet finished, Tom continued, voice low, steady. It grows. It sharpens. It waits for the moment worthy of its first breath. The whisper darkened. You cannot leave without naming. Tom stepped closer to the serpent, his gaze unyielding. Then you misunderstand, he said. I have named myself already. The world simply has not yet heard it. The serpent's form wavered, as if the very concept strained the hall's magic. Show me, the whisper demanded. Tom extended his hand. Shadows coiled at his fingertips, not summoned, not forced, but drawn by the momentum of his will. They twisted through the air, weaving themselves into elegant runes that hung between him and the serpent. The lights dimmed, leaving only the glow of these runes. They spelled nothing legible, not yet, but they carried intention. The whisper exhaled. You shape a name of shadows and future, not truth, not lie, possibility. Tom nodded. A name is not its sound, he said. It is its meaning, and mine has not yet finished becoming. The hall trembled. This was not defiance. It was mastery. The serpent bowed its head. The runes around the chamber flared to life, brighter than before, brighter than the relic's own light, casting radiance across the obsidian stone. The serpent dissolved into mist, drawn back into the pedestal as though returning to sleep. The whisper resounded, softer now, almost reverent. Then you are unlike any who came before. You walk neither in their shadow nor their folly. Your name shall be born in time, and when it comes, darkness itself will tremble. Tom exhaled. Not relief, fulfillment. The pedestal sank into the floor, vanishing into darkness. The chamber began to unravel like silk pulled apart, the stones dissolving into threads of silver light. The air folded, bending the world around him. Go, Tom Riddle, the whisper said, fading into distance. Forge the name you will one day speak. Light swallowed everything, and Tom found himself standing once more in the forgotten hall above the underground depths, the stone dais whole again. The paths vanished. The air was cool, undisturbed, as though centuries had passed and yet none at all. But Tom was changed. He stood taller, sharper, defined not by darkness, but by the mastery of it. He walked back through the silent corridor, the hidden door sealing behind him, leaving no trace of passage. The castle exhaled softly, as if acknowledging the shift in its halls. As Tom headed toward the dormitories, the torches flickered, bowing gently as though greeting the shadow of the name he would one day bear. A name he had chosen, a name the world would learn in fear. And though he did not yet speak it, darkness had already begun to listen. The following morning broke with a muted hush, as though the sky itself sensed the shift that had taken place beneath Hogwarts' ancient stones. A pale mist clung to the grounds, curling around the castle's buttresses like cautious fingers. Students stirred through corridors with groggy chatter and rustling robes, unaware of the shadowed thread newly woven into the castle's unseen loom. Tom Riddle walked among them as though nothing had touched his night. His stride was measured, his expression calm, his uniform immaculate. Yet beneath that polished surface, a subtle change pulsed. It was not visible, a locked door behind his eyes, a quiet resonance of will that made the air seem to lean subtly away from him. He passed students who parted instinctively, some without even realizing they did. Breakfast in the great hall buzzed with quiet excitement. Rumors spread quickly among the younger years, of shadows moving where no shadows should be, of teachers who passed the corridors with worried frowns. But the older students dismissed much of it as childish superstition. Tom sat alone at the end of the Slytherin table, listening without appearing to. The voices drifted to him like threads. The caretaker, Gryce, still unconscious. Professors whispering about old magic. Someone saw the headmaster down near the sublevels. None of it troubled him. All of it served him. As he cut a slice of toast, a shadow passed over his shoulder. He glanced up. Professor Slughorn approached with a strained smile, his face flushed from hurried steps. "Tom, there you are. Might I borrow you for a moment, dear boy?" Tom rose smoothly. "Of course, Professor." They walked toward the side entrance of the hall, where fewer students lingered. Slughorn fussed with his mustache, eyes darting anxiously about. "It's Gryce," he whispered. "His condition has worsened. He's speaking in riddles, nonsense mostly, but a few words, troubling words." Tom waited, face a mask of concern. "He mentioned darkness," Slughorn continued, "and power, and, well, fragments that make little sense without context. I fear the poor man was exposed to something terrible in those old tunnels." "What tunnels, Professor?" Tom asked mildly. "Well, the school has many unused passages, dangerous ones." Slughorn rubbed his brow. "We believe Gryce wandered into one and suffered a magical collapse." Tom tilted his head thoughtfully. "And how may I help?" Slughorn sighed. "He asked for you." Tom allowed the hint of surprise to touch his features. "He asked for me?" "By name, repeatedly," Slughorn confirmed. "We're hoping you might calm him, or at least glean something from his ravings. The headmaster thinks the old man may have seen something we should know." Tom nodded. "Very well. Take me to him." The hospital wing was quiet, the pale morning light filtering through tall windows in soft beams. Gryce lay in the far bed, trembling beneath the blankets. He no longer looked like a man, more like a remnant of one, drained of color, his breath shallow. The healers withdrew to give Tom space. Slughorn lingered at the door. "Call if you need anything," he murmured. Tom stepped closer. Gryce's eyes twitched beneath half-closed lids. His fingers clawed weakly at the sheets as though trying to grasp something just beyond reach. "Mr. Gryce," Tom said softly. The old man jolted. His eyes flew open, wild and unfocused, yet somehow impossibly aware. His gaze locked onto Tom's as though drawn by a hook. "You," Gryce rasped. "It follows you." Tom kept his voice gentle. "What follows me?" Gryce shuddered violently. "Shadows, whispers, a hall with no end. You walked where you should not walk." Tom's expression stayed serene, though his pulse tightened with interest. "Tell me what you saw." Gryce's hands rose weakly, as though warding off an unseen threat. "Names," he croaked. "So many names, but yours was empty. Empty, yet vast." Tom leaned in, letting gravity pull the truth from the old man's unraveling mind. "What did you hear, Gryce? Did something speak to you?" The caretaker's breath hitched. Tears formed at the corners of his eyes. "It tried to name me," he whispered. "It tried to show me what I was, and I broke. His trembling intensified. But you, his voice cracked, you broke it. Tom did not move. Gryce swallowed, eyes widening further. You shouldn't exist, he breathed. Not outside that chamber, not outside its naming. Tom placed a calm hand on the bed frame. You are confused. The collapse injured you. You must rest. No, Gryce moaned. You walked deeper, deeper, until the darkness looked away first. Tom's eyes narrowed just slightly. This old man saw too much. Far too much. Gryce's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. It fears you. The words hung in the air like a chill. And then, Gryce's body went rigid. His breath stopped. A thin gasp escaped him. Soft, final. The healers rushed forward. Slughorn cried out in alarm, but Tom stepped back, hands clasped calmly behind him. Gryce was gone. A hush fell over the room, thick and solemn. Slughorn turned to Tom, face pale. Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry you had to see that. Tom only inclined his head. He was suffering, he said softly. Perhaps this is mercy. Slughorn wiped his brow, nodding shakily. Yes, perhaps. Poor man. Such a tragic end. It need not trouble you, Tom murmured. The dead often speak confusion. He walked from the hospital wing with quiet grace, leaving behind gasps of sorrow and the faint scent of fading magic. But inside his thoughts, something stirred. Not regret, not sympathy, understanding. Gryce had touched the threshold of truth and broken beneath its weight. What he muttered in his final breaths revealed more than the Hall of Echoes intended. Tom's defiance had not merely been tolerated. It had been recognized, not named, not bound, but marked. He descended toward the lower levels again, not to return to the relic or the hall, but to feel the castle beneath his feet. The stones hummed faintly, like a beast stretching after long sleep. In the shadowed corner of a corridor, a torch flickered. Its flame bent toward him, as though bowing. Tom paused, watching that subtle gesture, sensing the undercurrent of acknowledgement. Power did not come from relics alone. It seeped into the world through choices, through will, through the quiet bending of forces that other wizards never touched. He placed his hand on the stone wall. The castle thrummed, faint yet receptive. It would take time, knowledge, patience. But there would come a day when he would speak the name he had forged in silence, a name the wizarding world would tremble to hear. The castle's whisper curled at the edge of his senses, waiting, listening, and Tom Riddle walked on, shadow stretching before him, long and certain, toward the future that had already begun to bow. The days that followed moved with deceptive calm, as though Hogwarts wished to sheath its secrets beneath ordinary routines. Lessons resumed, fires crackled in common rooms, and laughter from younger years warmed the halls. Yet beneath this gentle rhythm, something darker pulsed, an unseen tremor felt only by those attuned to the castle's shifting breath. Tom Riddle walked through this stillness like a quiet storm contained within the shape of a boy. His demeanor remained impeccable, his charm precise, but there was a tension behind his eyes now, a depth sharpened by the Hall of Echoes, by the relic's defiance, by Gryce's last trembling revelation. He had stepped beyond the path laid for ordinary wizards, and the world was beginning to sense it. One evening, as twilight draped the castle towers in shades of violet and gold, Tom returned to the library. Students whispered between shelves, their voices drifting through the grand chamber. But Tom sought neither company nor conversation. He moved toward the restricted section with the ease of someone who knew its shadows well. Madam Pince eyed him from her desk. "Back again, Tom?" she asked suspiciously. He gave her a courteous smile. "Research for Slughorn, madam. He's asked me to find references to early magical collapses beneath the school. Historical study." Her gaze softened. Tom's reputation for diligence preceded him, but she still peered curiously, as though sensing some edge in him she could not name. "Be careful with those books," she warned. "They remember hands that treat them roughly." Tom inclined his head. "I always am." The lock unfastened beneath her gesture, and Tom slipped beyond the dark curtain. Here, dust drifted like ancient breath. Tom inhaled its scent, savoring the hush of forbidden knowledge. His fingertips brushed leather spines, histories of forgotten sorcery, accounts of magical catastrophes, grimoires so old their ink had turned to charcoal dust. He found a table in a secluded alcove and opened an oversized tome bound in cracked brown hide. Its pages whispered like dried leaves. He sought any mention of relics bound to naming, any trace of a hall built beneath the castle, any secret the founders might have hidden from the world. But page after page revealed nothing. The castle's deepest truths remained shrouded, as though they had been erased or buried intentionally. Tom's brow furrowed. Hogwarts did not merely contain hidden chambers. It guarded them, as if obeying the quiet call of his thoughts. The lights above flickered. The air rippled with a faint tremor, subtle enough that another reader might mistake it for a draft. Tom knew better. Something near him stirred. He closed the book slowly. A faint line of runes, nearly invisible, shimmered along the table's surface. They pulsed once, responding to his presence. Tom lowered his wand tip, tracing the ancient script. The runes whispered under his breath like embers catching flame. A hidden ward, not from the library, from the castle itself. When he pressed the final rune, the surface dissolved into illusion. Beneath it lay another text, slender, wrapped in midnight blue cloth. Tom unwrapped it. Inside was a journal. The ink was faded, the parchment fragile. But the handwriting was strong, angular, like someone who wrote with purpose and authority. The first page held a single line, "For those who refuse the names carved for them." Tom's pulse sharpened. The next pages contained fragments of thoughts, reflections on power, identity, and the dangerous allure of naming magic. Most lines were cryptic, written in hurried strokes, but one passage shone with clarity. "The Hall of Echoes is not a place, but a test. It appears only to those who walk between what is given and what is taken." Among the founders, only one dared to step beyond the threshold. She alone understood that names are not bestowed, they are forged. Tom paused. She, a woman, one of the founders? Salazar Slytherin's scripts never spoke of such a thing, nor did the records of Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, or Ravenclaw. This knowledge had been buried deliberately. He turned the page. More fragments, descriptions of the hall's appearance, shifting paths, trials shaped from memory, ethereal serpents woven of thought. And finally, a warning. If the hall grants an audience, it sees the seeker's truth. But those who cannot master themselves become prisoners of their own reflection, their identity shattered. If a wizard refuses naming twice, the hall will mark him. Such a mark awakens a power not bound to light or darkness, but to will alone. Should such a wizard arise, Hogwarts itself will bend to him, or fear him. Tom closed the journal. The castle seemed to listen, waiting. He felt the mark, not physical, not visible, but a quiet echo beneath his magic. A shadow shaped like possibility. A certainty the hall had recognized him as something outside its ancient pattern. A footstep echoed. Tom slipped the journal beneath his robe just as the library curtain rustled. A prefect stepped forward, a girl from Ravenclaw, spectacles glinting. "Riddle," she said, slightly breathless. "Slughorn is looking for you again. He says it's urgent." Tom's gaze cooled. "About Grice?" "No. The headmaster is involved now. They've found something beneath the castle, something very old." Tom took a calm breath. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. Perhaps another tremor of the collapsing relic chamber had revealed passages unknown even to teachers, or perhaps the hall was moving its pieces. "I'll come," Tom said. The prefect led him down the winding corridors, her steps brisk despite her nervous glances. They reached the lower levels, where torchlight flickered against ancient stone. 3 professors waited there, Slughorn among them, anxious and pale. "Tom," he sighed with relief. Good. Come quickly." They led him through a narrow arch newly uncovered, a doorway sealed by centuries of disuse. Dust coated the floor in thick layers, the air tasted of earth and forgotten magic. A collapsed wall had revealed a chamber beyond. Tom felt the hairs on his arms rise. This was not the Relics Hall, nor the Hall of Echoes. This was older still. A storage vault, perhaps, or a sanctuary. But its walls bore no runes, only carved impressions, shapes worn smooth by time, symbols almost erased. In the center lay a stone box, large, sealed. A faint glow drifted from the cracks around its edges. Slughorn wrung his hands. "We fear it may be dangerous, some kind of ancient enchantment, but it reacted when you approached." Tom stilled. Of course it had. "Do you recognize the markings?" a stern professor asked him. Tom examined the box. No script, no heraldry. Only one carved emblem remained intact. A serpent curled into a perfect circle, head devouring its own tail. He felt the whisper return, faint, distant, like an echo carried across ages. Will shapes destiny. One professor stepped forward. "Tom, should we open it?" Tom met the ancient symbol's gaze. Something within the stone pulsed. A relic of the hall? A remnant of the founder who forged her name? Or a new trial awaiting him? The chamber's air darkened. Tom Riddle placed his hand upon the lid. "It is time," he murmured. The stone shuddered. The seal began to crack, and the ancient magic beneath Hogwarts stirred once more. The crack running across the stone lid widened with a slow, groaning shudder, as though the centuries that had held it closed strained now against the force of release. Dust spumed into the air, drifting like pale ash. The professors took an instinctive step back, their wands raised, their faces taut with caution. But Tom Riddle did not move. His hand remained upon the lid, steady and resolute, as if anchoring the awakening magic beneath. A thin thread of light seeped from the widening fissure, neither warm nor cold, neither gold nor silver, but a strange muted luminescence that felt older than language. It pulsed once, twice, then surged upward with a sigh that rustled the very air. Tom's eyes gleamed. The lid split cleanly down the center, the halves shifting apart to reveal a hollow interior lined with obsidian plates. Runes etched upon them glowed faintly, but the center of the vault was empty. No relic, no scroll, no artifact. Only air that shimmered. The professors exchanged uneasy glances. Slughorn cleared his throat, voice wavering. "Tom, do you sense anything? Any enchantment? Any, residue?" Tom lowered his hand into the vault. The air rippled like disturbed water. Suddenly the chamber seemed to darken, not visibly, not a dimming of torches or shadows, but a thickening of presence. Tom felt something coil around his arm, invisible but undeniable. It did not restrain him. It recognized him. "Yes," he murmured. "Something remains." The air stirred. A whisper, not like the Hall of Echoes, not like the relic's call, rose faintly, brushing the edges of hearing like wind sliding through hollow stone. "Chosen." Tom's breath quickened ever so slightly. The whisper carried no form, no directive. It was an acknowledgement, a greeting, as if the vault had waited not for any seeker, but for one whose will had shaped his identity beyond the reach of relics. The professors heard nothing. Only Tom stood in the current of silent knowing. "What is it, my boy?" Slughorn asked nervously. Tom withdrew his hand, though the whisper lingered like a fading pulse. "An imprint," he said, voice calm. "A remnant of magic that was once housed here." "Remnant?" the stern professor echoed. "Of what nature?" Tom let a thoughtful pause fill the chamber. "Old. Intentional, but not dangerous in its current form." Slughorn sagged with visible relief. Tom did not tell them that the vault had not responded to them at all, only to him. Nor did he say that the whisper had recognized the mark the hall had left upon his soul, a mark no wand could detect. The professors fell to inspecting the empty vault, raising torches, muttering quietly as they noted every marking. Tom stepped back, letting them occupy themselves. Their attention flickered aimlessly across the walls, tracing grooves and faded lines without understanding their purpose. Tom's gaze, however, found something. A small sigil carved into the inner seam of the vault's lid, so faint it could easily be mistaken for erosion. But Tom saw the shape clearly, a serpent biting its own tail, the same emblem he had encountered on the pedestal within the Hall of Echoes. His pulse tightened. Whatever had been stored here was tied to the same magic, a fragment, a piece, a sibling force to the hall's purpose. The whisper rose again, softer now, as though straining to be heard. "Complete." Tom's eyes narrowed. Complete what? The hall had tested him, recognized him, but not finished with him. And this vault, this hollow chamber, held only the memory of what once belonged here, a missing element, a path only partially unveiled, but the professors would see nothing. Their magic was too shallow for such depth. As Slughorn and the others began sealing the vault again with temporary spells, Tom stepped aside to examine the chamber's far wall. There, beneath layers of dust, faint carvings sprawled in looping lines. He brushed them clean with his sleeve. The carving was not a map, not a warning, not a message. It was a doorway, an outline etched into stone, its contours shaped like an arch but filled with solid rock. A doorway that had been sealed deliberately, not physically but magically, melted into the wall by a spell of tremendous precision. Tom's breath stilled. This was not the hall he had visited, not the relic chamber, not any known part of Hogwarts. This was a sealed passage, one the hall had not shown him, and the whisper from the vault seemed to tremble toward it, as though longing for reunion. Tom extended his hand toward the carvings. The rock shivered. Only for him, only for an instant, then fell still once more. "Tom," Slughorn called. "We're preparing to close this section. Best not to linger near the rubble." Tom stepped back smoothly. "Of course, Professor." But as they walked away, Tom cast one final glance over his shoulder. The arch lay motionless, but he felt its awareness like a sleeping serpent, curled and waiting. Back in the torchlit corridor, the professors mumbled about historical anomalies and structural dangers, but Tom's thoughts churned deeper, Sharper, pieces were aligning. The relic, the hall, the vault, the sealed passage, each one a fragment of an ancient design, one hidden from the world, one now awakening to him. He returned to the upper floors as dusk settled over the castle. In the Slytherin common room, the green flames of the hearth flickered lazily, casting watery light across stone walls carved with serpent motifs. Students whispered and laughed, oblivious to the undercurrent of rising magic. Tom withdrew to a quiet alcove, drawing the midnight blue journal from his robes. He opened it, finding new meaning now in the words he had read before. The hall appears where the will is strongest. The vault opens where identity takes root, and the final passage reveals itself only when the seeker has shaped the name that shadows fear. Tom closed the journal slowly. The hall believed he was nearing that moment. The vault had acknowledged him. The sealed passage awaited. A name unspoken pressed faintly beneath his ribs, forming slowly, deliberately, like a star being born behind layers of cloud. It was not ready, and yet the world was already shifting in anticipation of it. He felt something move through the castle air, a tremor, a hush, a ripple of instinct as the ancient stones of Hogwarts recognized the gravity of what approached. Tom Riddle leaned back in the shadows, eyes glowing faintly in the fire's reflected light. A name was coming, a name the world would learn, a name the hall would bow to, a name darkness itself would embrace, not yet spoken, not yet breathed, but inevitable. And the sealed passage beneath Hogwarts waited for the moment it would open, the moment Tom Riddle would step through, as someone reborn. Night cloaked Hogwarts in a mantle of solemn quiet, the kind that settles before storms. The air felt taut, expectant, as though the very stones beneath the castle sensed a boundary approaching, one about to be crossed. Tom Riddle walked alone through the low-lit corridors, his steps matched only by the rhythmic flicker of torch flames stretching long shadows behind him. He descended deeper and deeper, guided not by sight nor memory, but by the quiet pull that had followed him since the vault was opened. It threaded through the castle like a pulse only he could feel, a summons that neither relented nor spoke plainly. Tom followed it with unwavering certainty. He reached the lower levels, where old stone corridors coiled like buried serpents. Here, the castle grew older, rougher. The torches waned, leaving only silvery moonlight from thin slits in the walls. Dust sifted along the floors in faint spirals, as though stirred by invisible breath. The pull sharpened. Tom stopped before the sealed passage revealed earlier in the day. The arch etched into stone stood silent, its carved lines dull under the faint torchlight. Yet, Tom sensed alertness behind the wall, as if something listened from the other side. He stepped forward. "Open," he whispered, not as command, but as acknowledgement. The stone did not move. Tom placed his palm upon the center of the arch. The cold bit into his skin, but beneath it he felt a pulse, a slow, ancient beating, like a dormant heart roused by touch. "You know me," he murmured to the stone. "You have watched me walk the hall. You have witnessed the shaping of my will." Stillness. Silence. Tom's gaze sharpened. "I have forged my path without relic or prophecy. I do not follow shadows. I command them." A faint crack shimmered through the stone, thin as a strand of hair. Tom leaned closer. "You waited for one who would not be named by another. I am he. The seeker who refused naming twice. The one whose identity is shaped by choice, not fate." The pulse quickened. The arch glowed faintly, ancient runes stirring awake, shivering along its outline, like frost drawing patterns across glass. Tom spoke softly, each word a blade of certainty. I am ready to claim the truth of who I am becoming. The stone shuddered. A fissure widened down the center of the sealed passage, splitting the surface with slow, groaning strain. Dust rained down. The professor's earlier spells flickered, then snapped. The castle exhaled a low tremor, as though releasing a memory trapped too long. The passage parted. Beyond lay a narrow corridor cast in deep violet light, its walls smooth as polished onyx. Mist drifted from its depths, swirling like veils of living shadow. Tom stepped inside. The stone sealed quietly behind him. He walked. The corridor stretched impossibly far, yet each step seemed to draw him deeper into a space not bound by castle walls. Time folded, slowed, quickened in strange rhythms. The air here felt dense, not heavy, but potent, as though saturated with dormant enchantments. At last, the corridor opened into a cavernous chamber. It was circular, like the Hall of Echoes, but older, rawer, carved not by hands but by magic itself. The ceiling arched into darkness without visible support, and the floor was a single slab of obsidian that drank in all color. In the center stood a pedestal of translucent stone, glowing faintly from within. Upon it rested a shard, not metal, not bone, not crystal, a fragment of pure darkness, solid yet shifting, its edges dissolving into shadow and reforming in constant gentle motion. It hummed with low resonance, as though vibrating with caged purpose. Tom approached. The whisper returned, but it was no longer faint. It filled the chamber like a rising tide. At last, the shard pulsed. Tom stopped before it, breath steady, gaze unwavering. "What are you?" he asked. The whisper quivered, gathering into words not spoken but woven from the chamber's air. "The first fragment of the name you will one day bear." Tom's heart thrummed, not with surprise, but fierce satisfaction. The shard brightened, casting violet light across his face. "The founders bound me here," the whisper continued. "A piece of magic too potent to wield without claiming one's true identity. Only the one who rejects naming may touch me without being undone." Tom reached out. The whisper deepened. "Take me, Seeker, and begin the forging." Tom's fingers brushed the shard. Shadow surged into his skin, cold, sharp, singing like a blade being drawn. But Tom did not flinch. The energy coursed through him, racing up his arm and into his chest, coiling behind his ribs like a serpent awakening. Visions flared. A throne carved from midnight stone. A wand raised above armies. A name spoken only in fear and reverence. A boy abandoned becoming a man remade by will alone. Tom tightened his grip. The shard's glow intensified, merging into his hand until it dissolved completely, sinking into him like ink poured into water. The chamber trembled. One fragment claimed. The whisper murmured. 2 remain. Tom steadied his breath. Where are they? Hidden, guarded, awaiting the one who completes the path. And when all 3 are mine? The whisper fell silent for a long moment. Then, your name will be forged, and the world will bow. Tom smiled, a thin, calm curve born not from delight, but inevitability. He turned as the chamber dimmed, the pedestal sinking back into the floor. The corridor behind him unfurled once more, ready to carry him back into the world above. The sealed passage would hide itself again, waiting for the next fragment's call. Tom began walking, the shadows parting before him like obedient subjects. He felt the shards echo beneath his skin. Silent, potent, a dormant ember waiting for breath to kindle it into fire. The castle's stones hummed softly as he emerged into the lower corridor, the arch already vanished without a trace. Torches bowed their flames toward him, dimming in a low, reverent bend. Tom Riddle walked upward into the sleeping castle, the first fragment of his future pulsing like a heartbeat within him. A name was forming, not yet spoken, not yet unveiled, but inevitable now and unstoppable. And when it finally left his lips,